bishops, or it never was?
Oh, to make something holy to have obligation?
Like,
Oh, that's a good
because
question. Go,
I mean,
hey, we're
I
just
grew up in
starting, so
Illinois, so it could
yeah.
have very well been.
Oh, that's a good question. So, welcome everybody by the Father. So we have our first question, which was asked. So we were talking earlier a little bit before we turned the camera on about Triduum. So Triduum means 3 days. That's Latin for 3 days. And the 3 days we're talking about specifically are Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday. And so I was stating that up until I was about 14 years old, I always thought that the Triduum was obligatory because that's just something we did as a family. And the question was asked, well, who makes that decision? Is it possible that a bishop can make Triduum obligatory? And the answer to that is yes, they can. Right? They have full autonomy in that regard within their diocese to do that. I think some bishops probably wisely have to ask themselves, what are the consequences of that? But I mean, otherwise, I think in some ways there's a great beauty in seeing the fullness of these 3 days. That actually is a continuous liturgy, right? So Triduum officially starts at the Mass of the Lord's Supper on Holy Thursday, which ends with doesn't end with a final blessing. It ends with a procession of the Blessed Sacrament to another church or another altar, where the rest of the night people can come and adore. Which also means that the next day on Good Friday, we don't start in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We actually start in complete silence. And the ministers and people, we start with kneeling and lying prostrate in front of the altar. And then even so, that does not necessarily end in the way that traditionally a Mass would traditionally end, because also it's not a Mass. And then we pick up on on Holy Saturday night with the beginning of Easter, which is the Easter Vigil. That does start actually with a lighting of a fire. So it's continuous action that's going on in these liturgies that if you missed part of it, you kind of lose something of what's actually happening there. So yeah, no, but a bishop can certainly make them obligatory holy days of obligation, although one may argue that Good Friday may not be able to be made a holy day of obligation because there's not a Mass on that day. But could a bishop make it obligatory to attend Veneration of the Cross? It's very possible. That might be a lacuna in the law, a question that may have to be brought up to someone with a greater canonical legal mind than me.
But there is a communion service.
There is communion service. There is distribution of the Eucharist after the Veneration of the Cross. There is a liturgy of the Word, but it's not a Mass because the words of consecration are not said, right. Which means we have to make sure we consecrate enough hosts on Holy Thursday that everyone that comes on Good Friday can receive if they so desire.
Well, somewhere in my memory, maybe I'm wrong, but I think as a child, I don't think that they had a communion service on Good Friday. Maybe I'm.
They not distribute communion? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to look at the old rite to see how that worked. Sure. Yeah, I know for sure they wouldn't have a Mass.
Oh, I know that.
But it's very possible just had maybe liturgy of the Word with Veneration of the Cross. Sure, I don't know. Which probably would make things easier in some ways, although whatever's left over Holy Thursday still has to be reposed in some way. As a matter of fact, we're kind of going to follow the germ completely this year. So one thing that is interesting is that actually the missal dictates that before the Mass of the Lord's Supper, the tabernacle should be completely empty. Mm-hmm. And not many people follow that. And I've asked the office of worship about that. Like, well, it's sort of a pastoral thing. But I think it's probably good to do that. So,
we always.
That was always the thing here.
Yeah.
That they stripped the altar, took everything off.
Oh, that happens regardless. The other thing that's optional in Holy Thursday is the mandatum, which is the washing of the feet. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of that depends on how many people you have to do it. You need at least 3. Ideally, you would have 12. You should have no more than 12. And under Pope Francis, it was opened up to pretty much anybody, which is interesting. Because the whole point of that is the symbolism of Jesus washing the feet of the apostles. And so prior to, I think it was 2015, that was all men, right? It was all men. So because of that symbolism of the priesthood and the Eucharist at the Last Supper. So there was more openness then to many different people. Right.
On one of the
Oh,
services, they don't ring the bells. They use this piece of wood.
Strepitus.
What is it called?
Strepitus.
Strepitus.
Yeah. So that's
Nailing of the cross.
yeah. So it symbolizes the hammer that hit in the nails, right? And so that is not necessarily required to be used, but I think many people do because what is explicit in the missal is bells after the Gloria until the Easter Vigil. Gloria. Right. Even for the consecration. So for the consecration, we will not use bells on Holy Thursday.
There's just something that when you hear the nails and the cross,
Yeah.
I mean, it
shocks you a little bit,
it
right?
does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. I
It-
think that's the purpose. Yeah.
I feel I'm being brought there every Sunday. I
Mhm.
feel I'm being brought there, but that. Oh, for the last.
No, I mean, I think that's the idea. You would talk about the Mass, not just to the aspect of like the spirituality and the theological aspects of it, but also like the smells and bells, right? The experience. And that's part of it. That Holy Thursday, this is recognition. Hey, he's being arrested now and he's in the garden. But at the end of that night, as we kind of symbolize in the adoration of Jesus until about midnight, he's then taken out of the garden, right? And he's in Caiaphas. He's put in prison, put in Caiaphas' basement. And then he's taken out the next morning and he's on the cross, right? So, yeah, I think it's the symbolism there is meant for us to be cognizant of what actually Jesus was going through during these times that we're actually celebrating the liturgy, commemorating these times in real time in some ways of what was happening at the Last Supper, in the garden, and then of course on Good Friday in his trial and his execution and his death, right?
Oh.
Yeah, I think I've only really missed doing the Triduum one year when I was in the choir and we did the one. I think we did the Easter Mass. And,
Yeah.
And the Easter Mass isn't at all like.
No.
I mean, you feel like you're missing something.
Yeah. No. I mean,
Easter Mass.
I think talking about speaking of music and choir, I think the most beautiful music usually is around this time of year of the Triduum because I think the most profound music I've ever heard in liturgy was actually at the cathedral on Good Friday. There's a movement, there's a moving of the emotion as very much involved. And for me personally, it brought me very much in mind with what was happening. Right. So yeah, no, I think there's something about that, right? In some ways the Triduum is sort of like a roller coaster of emotion. We're going through this aspects of great sadness and great sorrow. And then we end, of course, with great glory and joy and the fact that Jesus rose from the dead. And I think the music should reflect that, for sure.
Is it written in the right somewhere that Jesus Christ is risen today as a required song?
No. So, yeah, no, I mean, that's, yeah.
Forever.
I mean, music, when it comes to music, especially post-Vatican II, even before Vatican II, there wasn't really a lot of direction. So, it's funny that like in the old Mass, for instance, we kind of talked about this. We talked about that in our Latin class, a few weeks ago. You have these things called missa cantatas, right? So these are kind of the highest form of the extraordinary form, the old Latin Mass, right? And what these were just like there were singing and choral accompaniment and instruments that were kind of like they were basically accompanying whatever the actions were going on in the Mass. Because in the extraordinary form, not many people really realize this because maybe we don't experience it, but there's not a lot of interaction between the priest and the congregation. Actually, very, very little. At one point, right before the distribution of the Eucharist, there's the words Dominus Vobiscum are said to the people and the Et cum Spiritu. That's it. Everything else is between the priests and the other ministers in the sanctuary. And so kind of like, and most of the time you couldn't hear what even was being said at the altar because it was done in a low voice. So to kind of like fill the void, they would have things being composed to kind of accompany the action of the Mass. So Mozart and Bach, many of their greatest works were actually written for the Mass. There were Masses. So while what they would be playing as the action were going on, and you would just, basically listen to the music and, kind of engage in that way. But there's really not any, there was no like instruction as far as like, hey, the music should do this, or it should like, this kind of music should accompany this kind of action, or even seasonally. There definitely are music, there's hymns and stuff that are composed for particular seasons. And so reason would dictate, yeah, we probably should sing those in those seasons. But for instance, like next Wednesday is the Feast of the Annunciation. Okay, well, would it be appropriate to actually sing Christmas carols on that day? Sure. I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, if we're looking at this understanding of the incarnation, that's when the incarnation happened. Even though we celebrate Christmas as the incarnation, next Wednesday is when it actually occurred. In the same regard, it could also be just as proper to actually sing Good Friday hymns on that day. The reason being is because in 33 AD, Good Friday, the day that Jesus was actually crucified, would have been March 25th. The same day that he was conceived is the same day that he died. And there's actually a tradition culturally that great men were actually conceived and died on the same day. So we would imagine that applied specifically for Jesus, because he was not only the greatest man, but God himself, right? So in that regard, it really comes down to more of an aspect of propriety and what's reasonable. So like, again, Easter season, it wouldn't be really good to sing dirges or things we would do on Good Friday, because that's not what the season is directed towards. Right. So is there really instruction in that or clear direction? Not really. What was rather fascinating is back in 2020, the U.S. bishops got together and they put a document out about liturgical music. And the thing that was rather interesting about that document is they actually named names of hymns that should not be used, which was radical in some ways, because any bishops, as well as really anyone that's in sort of a public aspect, they try to be rather apolitical, and they try to maybe also approach things from an even keel standpoint. But some of these hymns they were really condemning, or saying they're not. I should say they're condemned. They're saying it was not proper for liturgical use. Kind of was shocking in some ways, but they also make sense, because some of the reasons they were kind of naming names was that these particular hymns, theologically, the lyrics were not sound. They weren't in line with Catholic teaching when it came to things like the church, or the incarnation, or the resurrection of Christ. And so in that regard, they really shouldn't be proper. Some actually hymns, the actual artist went back and changed the lyrics to be more in line with theology. And that was rather fascinating too. So even like for instance, Vatican II is very adamant about not using the Tetragrammaton. And for those who don't know, the Tetragrammaton is the name I am, which is the name of God, right, in Hebrew. That you notice in our liturgy today, we don't use that word, right, ever. And our music should also not use that too, out of deference and respect to our Jewish roots, right? So there were songs that would use those words, and we're like, we shouldn't use that, right? So, for instance, I'm very happy that this was on the list in some ways, because it does kind of drive me crazy. But the Lord of the Dance, for instance, right? I don't know if you guys know this, that Tim, you guys know, yeah. It's not really proper. It's not really theologically sound. And so for that reason, we should not use it. And that was on the list. So yeah, I mean, it's not, there's not really like a, hey, you should use these hymns, or you should use like this particular type of music or themed or whatever. It's really more an aspect of what's reasonable, that makes sense within the season or the actual mass or liturgy you're celebrating. Yeah. Great. Any other questions, comments, concerns, heresies?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What is Zionism?
I think Zionism is classically defined as the right of the Jewish people to have their own state. I think that's classically how Zionism is defined. Is that Zionism is that the people of Hebrew descent, Jewish faith, have the right, and actually even the gift or the prophecy of a state that is theirs that they can run, right? Now,
Religious related? Or
well, I mean, so that's the thing, right? I don't know if you really separate the culture from the religion, right? Because even from antiquity, those have been so intertwined that you can't separate it, right? So some people say, well, I'm culturally Jewish. And it usually means what they really mean by that is I'm atheistic. I don't really believe in God, but I come from a Jewish family and a Jewish background. But Judaism is not just that. I mean, Judaism is a faith, and it's also a people. So I don't know if you can really separate that when it comes to like something like Zionism.
Mhm.
I don't think Zionists would necessarily separate it. I think they would say that it really is ultimately a theocracy, meaning a religion and a particular faith is dictating the actual secular or common living, right? So yeah, I mean, I think we would define it. Because a lot of these isms aren't necessarily like clearly defined. They may change over time based on popular opinion, cultural background, whatever. I think though traditionally you would say that's what Zionism is defined as, right? So there's been a lot of debate recently about exactly. I mean, I think there's been a lot of debate recently about what we as Catholics may say about that. So I think that kind of goes more fundamentally. Does anybody deserve or have a right to a particular state or country? I don't know if that's really something that would be granted, especially granted by God, right? So in other words, does God dictate that, hey, Greece, you guys are Greeks, you have a shared culture, you deserve or have a right to a particular government or state? I don't know, right? That seems rather odd that God would actually dictate or demand that. Now, one may argue, well, yeah, but also the Jewish people are chosen by God, which we would say, yes, they are, right? But the people of Israel and the government of Israel, we would say, are probably two separate entities, right? So in other words, everyone needs probably some form of government or some kind of form of state to which due honor and respect would be given to. But does that mean that a particular form of government is ordained by God over a particular people?
Doesn't seem like.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a very interesting question, and I don't know if that's really would be true.
Is that different than the land that was promised that would be theirs?
Yeah, I mean,
forever?
well, I mean, if you want to look down into it, right, that who was governing the people of Israel when they were promised the land by God? God was. God. I mean, so the first king, King Saul, he wasn't a king. As a matter of fact, in the book of Samuel, we're told very clearly that Samuel was trying to persuade the people not to have a king because God's your king, right? Before that, what happened up until after Moses was you'd have these judges. So whenever there was like a threat from an outside entity, whether it be the Moabites or the Philistines or whatever it is, God would appoint a judge to kind of like lead the people against and defend against these outside forces. Well, that all changed when the people went to Samuel, who was the prophet at the time, not a judge, but a prophet, and said, hey, everyone else around us has kings. We want a king too. And Samuel was like, but God is your king. You don't need one. He's protecting you all this time. He brought you out of Israel, almost 1,000 years ago. And he's, always brought someone up to actually defend you against all these oncoming, people that were trying to destroy you. So he'll keep on doing that if you remain faithful. Well, we want a king. So God told Samuel, yeah, let him have a king. Sure, okay, fine. They've rejected me as their king. They're hard of heart, fine. So I guess Saul then was consecrated king, right? And he wasn't great.
Yeah.
I mean, he very quickly, the prophecy of Saul came true, because what Saul was telling the people was, he's going to take your children to be his servants. He's going to take the best of your crops. He's going to take your best of your cattle. That's the right of the king. Do you want that? Yeah, okay. All right, okay, fine. All right, fine, great. So,
So he did.
yeah, so when that was promised to the people, it wasn't any form of God, I'm going to be your government. Well, we're a little bit far removed from that now, even today, right? So, yeah, that's a very interesting discussion, interesting debate. I think what's going on right now, it's very hard to, I think, justify in certain ways what's going on with Iran and other places. So, yeah. Did I answer your question? Okay. Okay, we're really quiet tonight.
I don't know.
Too much corned beef and cabbage. Yeah. All right.
Okay, infant baptism.
Yeah.
I believe it was said that it is possible to baptize a child of a same-sex couple.
Yes.
So someone needs to promise to bring that child up in the faith, right?
Correct.
And where does that come from?
The godparents. Primarily. Yeah.
Godparents.
So in that instance, I mean, obviously as a pastor, if someone would come to me and say they want their child baptized, my first response is, that's wonderful. Let's talk about that. In a situation where you have two people that are in a same-sex union, experience same-sex attraction, I think there is a deeper discussion to be having with the parents, but that would not keep the child from being baptized, provided there can be somebody that would take over the responsibility of raising that child in the way the church would teach.
Mhm.
And primarily the responsibility might come more to the godparents in that, which is, again, also tricky, because you have to really be sure that that person is able to do that, right? So if it were me, what I would probably suggest is we use someone in the parish to be the godparent for that person.
Mhm.
And that might require a little more like work as far as like meeting with the people to kind of get to know each other, that kind of thing. But I think in general, that's the role of the godparent regardless. So I think culturally have looked at as godparents as more like an honor for them. And it is, but that's not all they do. Their job is actually their main job is to pray for that child, right? So
Mhm.
my niece, I'm the godfather for her. And I pray every day for her because that's my job, right? But also to be a model of the faith for them and help the parents raise that child in the faith. Now, helping is a little different than taking responsibility for, but in that instance, there would be more responsibility put on the person, the godparent, which would have to be communicated ahead of time, right?
Does the legal parents of the child is the one that have to request the baptism?
Not necessarily. All that's required from the parents is minimally is they don't object, right? So let's say a grandmother comes to the priest and says, my grandchild's not baptized, I want to get him baptized, but my son or my daughter is in a same-sex union. Okay, well, we can talk about that. My first question is, would they object to having the child baptized? If the answer is yes, okay, well, we may have a discussion with the parents, maybe have maybe it could be something as simple as, what are your objections? What is the issue? Like, well, I don't like this church. Okay, well, fine. Well, whatever. We'll find something else for you, right? Meaning just maybe it's just the aesthetic. Okay, we'll find, we want to get baptized here. We'll find another church for you. I don't know. Barring all that, though, I mean, yeah, if they were just obstinate in the fact that we just don't want our child baptized, or what they may sometimes say is, well, we want them to grow up and decide for themselves. There's not much I can really do then at that point, right? And that's oftentimes where you get a particular grandmother or grandfather that might, well, I'm giving the baby a bath this week in the sink. I've had the discussion with my parents a few times because, I think I don't know if I mentioned it here, but like, I find my job is to remove as many obstacles as possible, right? Because my deference is, and I was saying preference, I'm saying my deference, right? This is my like backup, is that I'd rather them receive the sacrament than not. Anything we can do that can allow them to receive the grace of the sacrament, I should do, right? Even if that means it's a regular situation going on, okay, let's talk about it, but also I still want to have your child baptized. And part of that, I think, for me is just the fact that because I do have family that have not had their children baptized, and it drives me crazy. And one of the conversations I've had with my parents a few times is, even though every fiber of my being was screaming out, yes, do it, was with my mother, with my niece, was like, well, why don't you just baptize in the sink? You shouldn't do that. Right. Not without at least, well, here's the thing. If there's no obstinance to, or no barring from the parents, I'll do it. Let's make sure it's done right and done licitly, because it's not just about validity; it's about licity too, right? When done right in the proper way. But yeah, otherwise, yeah. If my mother were to pour water on my niece's head and say the words, "I baptize you in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit," she's baptized, and good. Now let's just record it, so that we actually have it on record.
So how old do you have to be a godparent?
You have to be at least 16 years of age.
And when did that rule come about?
It's in canon law, so at least 1983. So the law of 83 requires you have to be at least 16 years of age, a practicing Catholic, meaning you're confirmed, you're engaged with the faith, and if married, recognized or properly dispensed by the church. So even if, let's say, I'm confirmed and let's say I go to Mass every Sunday, but instead of getting married in the church, I got married in justice of the peace, you are not a valid candidate to be a godparent. And that's why it's becoming, I think, harder and harder really to find godparents in our society today, because not many people meet those criteria out of ignorance or whatever else it may be. And sometimes those instances, they lead to discussions with the potential godparents about, to, if anything, just to regularize your situation, right? So let's convalidate your marriage, or maybe if there's some obstinance from the other party, we can maybe do a radicalization or something. We can figure it out, right? But it's simple now. I mean, like I say, I have a scenario where I'm working with a family where I don't know if any godparents any people in their family that's actually eligible. So oftentimes the situations, what happens is we ask someone from the parish to maybe step in and do that. We're having actually a baptism and confirmation next Wednesday on the 25th for one of our 7th graders. And same scenario. We're going to have one of our teachers to do it. And fine. And we talk to the candidate and say, well, who do you want? And usually it's like, I want this teacher. Okay, cool. That's fine. Let's go talk to the teacher, make sure they're okay. So yeah, that's happened a few times.
That seems like it would be hard for that teacher then to follow up for the rest of her life, to be an example for a child that she may move away or
Yeah,
get a different
yeah,
job. or-
Yep, it can be. But again, the main job of that godparent is to pray for them. So you don't have to be present in order to do that. Praise God. Right. And also, in some ways too, I think we do trust in the grace of the sacraments that they're going to lead that person to where they need to be some way. Right.
Especially if they're already at the age of
Correct.
receiving
Correct, yeah.
confirmation.
Yep.
Which will be the second time you've done it since the
I
confirmation.
know. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Well, I know I can do this before the confirmation, but hey, I tell you the truth, I'm happy doing it. So it's fine. If they, whatever, right. I'm here and I can do it. So praise God. The only situation would be, if the person's already baptized Catholic, I have to get that delegated to me by the bishop.
Mm.
But otherwise, the law allows the person that baptizes also to confirm if that child is of age. And
But you could do confirmation here if you got permission. You're saying you'd have to get permission to do confirmation for our kids.
if they're already baptized Catholic, yes.
Okay.
I have to- well, it's not. Yeah, it's really rather informal.
Okay.
Like even this last Monday when the Archbishop couldn't come,
Mhm.
I even offer him like, well, if he wants to give me delegation, I'll just do it. Not hard to hear, But Father Shovel does a great job, and I like Father Shovel, so I'm glad he came.
Who
You know.
doesn't?
I know, right? He's also funny because he had his first mass at my home parish too, because he moved into the parish when he was in the seminary.
Oh,
So he's technically a parishioner of Immaculate Heart of Mary.
oh, cool.
So I think that's like 5 priests I know of that came from IHM. So that's pretty
Wow.
cool.
That's cool. Well,
Actually, it used to be back in the day that was kind of a powerhouse for priests.
he's a good one.
He is a good one. Yeah. And the other one's Father Callahan, not Kevin Callahan, Jim Callahan,
Okay.
and Father Jack Rosica. He's an IHM kid. So we're about 15 years removed from each other, but still, it's a good time.
Yeah, Father Shovel, I got to know him a little bit when he was at St. Ferdinand or St. Rose Philippine de Shane for a while. And we had a couple of really good conversations. I offered him, well, my son was behind on his school tuition, and I thought, well, I'll pay it. And the first thing out of his mouth was, no, you don't have to do that. He said, I know that I could call your son and daughter-in-law at any time and say, I need help up here. I need this or that done, and they would come. And I said, well, they would break their neck doing it, but I said, you got a young family and that, and I said, I want to do it. So he finally accepted the check, but the first thing he told me was, you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I don't know how old I was then, but I had to live this long to hear a priest refuse money.
He may not have been a pastor that long at that point. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, he is. He is. Well, great. Anybody else?
What's the significance of the feast Thursday?
Oh, this Thursday, Feast Saint Joseph. Yeah,
St. Joseph?
Saint Joseph. Yeah. So the Solemnity of Saint Joseph. So it's the highest you can possibly get liturgically, right? So it's a solemnity, meaning we'll have three readings. First, Old Testament, New Testament, Gospel. We'll hear the Gloria, even though we're in Easter. Somebody got to say Gloria. You won't hear the Alleluia because that's still Lent. We'll actually in that mass we won't profess the creed because there's a confirmation. Oh, sorry, Thursday we will profess the creed. Yes, just like we would any Sunday. And the benefit, more practically, is that because it's a feast day, we don't fast on feast days or feast on fast days. So therefore, we are remitted from our Lenten practices for that day. So if, let's say, for instance, the 19th fell on a Friday, or even the 25th fell on a Friday of March, you could also eat meat that day, right? So even the Lenten practice of giving up meat would be remitted because of the importance of the day. Yeah, right. Is that what you're getting at? Yeah. So if you guys have candy for Lent, Thursday, have at it.
Well, I mean, I didn't have any specific, just sort of, I mean, it's a special day for me because it's my.
That's your feast day, right? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're celebrating, of course, Joseph, the husband of Mary, right? The leader of the Holy Family. So the readings are kind of reflected on that. It's funny though. There's two options for Thursday. One is talking about the after the Annunciation and Joseph being visited in a dream, right? It kind of describes Joseph as being righteous, which is a very good thing to say about somebody. The second reading that day is about Jesus being lost in the temple. So you go from this, like, he's a very righteous man, but also he did lose Jesus. So I don't know. I'm not sure which one we're going to use that day yet. I'm still discerning that, but
Welcome to parenting.
I know, right? So yeah, it's a wonderful feast day, especially as husbands and fathers. I think it's always a good one to celebrate. But also, he's the patron saint of workers. He's the patron saint of the church. So yeah, I think it's always a good thing to recognize a model for fathers and
So is there a Saint
husbands.
Joseph the Worker?
Yeah,
Also?
there is on May 1st.
And it's the same category?
No, it is a memorial. So the reason that was established actually was established by, I think it was Pius the 12th, to kind of as like communism was growing. So communism had this thing called May Day, which was like a celebration of workers, right?
Yeah.
And so I think to kind of combat and kind of Christianize it, Pius the 12th established St. Joseph the Worker, which is May 1st. And so that was sort of like a Catholic Labor Day, so to speak, right? But no, it's not on the same hierarchy of liturgies as the Solemnity of St. Joseph. 19th, I'm not really sure exactly why the 19th was chosen. I'm not sure how significant it was. I mean, that probably goes back to antiquity. It's probably always celebrated on the 19th of March. But why, I can't really tell you. Yeah.
Probably because they figured it must always be in Lent. You get a day off.
Yeah, maybe they wanted to give a reprieve. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, Lent, yeah, I mean, you think about it, Lent was, before, Vatican II. It was, well, even back in the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance, it was pretty hardcore. I mean, not only was just like no meat, it was like no sugar, no eggs, no, milk. That's one of the reasons why pretzels were invented, is because pretzels were actually developed by monks as something you could actually eat and snack on
Live on.
for Lent, right? Actually, same with beer. beer actually is a Lenten invention. So those monks knew what they were doing, I guess. I don't know. That's right. Always looking for loopholes. That's what a good canonist always does. All right.
Cool.
Anything else?
Right on. Happy St. Pat's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week, unless there's any questions maybe online. Looks like a couple of people watching online. So if you want to type them in now, you can. We'll give you about 10 seconds. Otherwise, we'll see everyone next week. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay. All right. We'll see everyone next week. Thanks for coming by.
Renee, what are you making?
Octopus.
Ooh.